Hello, guten Tag, und grüß Gott. Today is February the 27th. We're heading toward the end of the month, 2022, and it is a fine Sunday. The temperature in these parts of the world is in the 70s, and elsewhere it may be snowy and windy and cold. And it's probably really cold in the Ukraine right now, because the big news, of course, and the big event of this week is that this past Thursday, the 24th of February, the Russians invaded the Ukraine. And from all that we can tell at this point in time, it doesn't seem to be going well for either party, the invaders nor the invaded, because the Ukrainians are really fighting back hard. So the reason I'm doing this video right now, because it's pretty appropriate actually, because we're talking about a Russian invasion. And the appropriateness is that I know about Russian invasions, because in 1944, so I was 4 years old, going on 5, we were invaded by the Russians. And I'm going to tell you the circumstances. So I think I made a video before of that our family are refugees from the East. And we were hoping to get back to our home in some fashion. And so what we did is my dad packed up the family, sent my mom and Walter as a baby and myself to what is known as the Sudetenland. And the Sudetenland is actually part of the Czech Republic right now. So to us it was the Sudetenland. And you know, this was one of those things, you know, that the Germans took as Anschluss. But let me get back to the invasions of the Russians. So I, as a youngster there, do remember very vividly the sound of the alarm, air raid sirens. We were very much in tune, you know, and I can't remember now which one was there was a take cover, which was an alarm. We all knew about it. So, you know, sirens would blare, and they would blare in a certain tone and in a certain sequence, and it would mean, you know, take cover. And so we were actually in a war zone, and the Russians were bombing us. Not the town itself. At least I don't remember bombings in the town, but there was destruction because I was actually shot at. And so while I was a little guy, you know, I was walking with a friend of mine somewhere in Zwittau. Suddenly an airplane came, and we had no warning. So evidently they didn't see it, you know, or whatever, you know, there was no warning. Airplane came and strafed the town, and so there was a brick building and a sidewalk, and there were people on the sidewalk, including me, and suddenly bricks were flying all over the place, you know, and we knew that, you know, you could hear the gunshots, and so they were strafing the town. So there was stuff like this going on. But let me get back to the invasion, because the first Russians that invaded were actually Cossacks. And they invaded on horseback. Yeah, they came on horseback. Now, in the meantime, Zwittau was a typical medieval town that had a walled town. So the town was walled, and it had gates. And the main gate into the town was actually fortified, and the population was enlisted, you know, to build what they called a Panzersperre. And what that means is, you know, evidently, you know, some sort of a tank trap, you know, so a tank can't go through because evidently the gate was large enough for tanks to go through. And so what they did is they took a part of that and put the timbers into the ground. I remember the timbers and lots of dirt and rocks and things. So they built this and made the inlet into the town really narrow. So you could get through with maybe a horse cart or something of that nature, But there was traffic going in and out. There had to be traffic in and out. I mean, there were supplies to be brought and this kind of thing. So the population built these things. The irony was that when the Cossacks came, that's the first thing they did is they had the population, dismantle those Panzersperre. And I remember the women up there, moving rocks and getting dirt out of the way and stuff. And the reason I say that I remember the women because it was mostly women that were doing the work, and there were some old guys, but all of the men that were of an age to be in the army, they were of course gone at war or they were in captivity. Well, anyway, they weren't there. So the town was basically. The population was comprised of some old men, and by old, they're probably in their 50s, so, not like 82 or something. But anyway, so they were even too old for what the Germans called the Volkssturm, because they actually set up the people that, the men that couldn't fight on the front for one reason or another. They became part of the Volkssturm, and they were supposed to be the assisting during an invasion. They're supposed to take up positions with their guns and so forth. And as a matter of fact, my father was part of the Volkssturm because once a month he had to go and demonstrate his skills at shooting rifles, and of course for him this was easy because he was a dead shot, and so he would go and quickly do his shooting, and then he could go out and enjoy the weekend and do the hunting and the things that he wanted to do. But so the Russians invaded. So I just want to briefly talk about this invasion. So the Cossacks came. They actually came on horseback. And they camped outside of town, and they were really great people because in the evening, they put on horse shows. And these guys were, jumping over the horses, sideways, crawling under the belly, and doing all this. Of course, they had lots of alcohol, and so they got on their ass every night. And they were good to kids because I and some of the neighborhood kids, we used to go there. And we would trade them, onion, radishes, or things that, people gave us from the gardens, and they would give us sticky candy. I remember the sticky candy, and they had a big jar, and they would give you some. And we could just hang out there. And in fact, I made friends with a particular horse that came to look for me later on. And I did that in a video already. But the invasions of the Russians. And I've actually enlisted my wife, Marge, to sit here and say hi, Marge.
Hi.
She's here because it's so much better to talk to a person, than just into the camera as such. So, the invasion. So here was the thing, is, I don't know how long the Cossacks were in charge, but so here the Russians came. It was no big deal. It was, they didn't bother anybody. They would come in and into the city and they would trade. If they had to buy meats or food and stuff like this, they would trade something for that. And so we got along fairly well with them. But then the occupation forces came. Okay, the Besatzungstruppen. And that was a whole different thing. Everything changed then. Because what they had was 14 days of plundering rights. Now what that meant is that they could commit any kind of criminal act, and they were just simply not held to task on that. And this is when atrocities occurred. And I don't want to talk about the specifics, but right in my neighborhood, the house next door, they the Russians really, really misbehaved. It was really bad. They killed some of the children. Anyway, never mind that. And of course, the entire neighborhood was in an uproar. How in the world could they let this? But everybody had to shut up. So, and my mom, she over the doorway had written. She knew Russian, and so over the doorway she had written in paint, typhoid. In Russian, in the Cyrillic language. I don't know whether it did any good, but you know what? We were not molested as far as I know. But every night that we went to sleep, there was that fear of, some knock on the door by a Russian, and they would do the same things they did to our neighbor, and that would be anything. So they could take anything that they wanted to. But again, we were largely spared that. There was one Russian that came in one time, and it was looking, I remember how scared my mom was because, here was this guy just walked in and they could do that. So he walked in and talked to my mom, and he said, I too have a family at home, and I have a toothache. Do you have some garlic? And so my mom didn't have any garlic, but she went to the neighbors and got him some garlic, and that's what he did for a toothache. Yeah. So when I recently had a toothache, I put some garlic on it, and you know what? It does work. It's just the weirdest thing. And, so this guy was onto something. So, yeah, then every day, we heard during those 14 days that the Russians did something else and did something else. But after the 14 days, things quieted down. And, once the occupation forces came, the bombs also stopped because the Germans didn't come back and start bombing the front lines, But I wanted to make this video today because I was in the front line of a war zone as a little kid. And I wanted to, whoever's listening to this, I wanted to give them the, some of the feeling of what it is like to be in a war zone for those that haven't been in a war zone. It's hard to describe because it's terrible, but that's not the right word. But I can tell you this, that what I do remember is that I was hoping that the war would end. And if the war would end and the bombing would stop and all of this fear, would be gone, that nothing what could happen afterwards would faze me. It was the, the best way that I can describe that, that this was the very worst of everything. In the meantime, I had, polio or cancer and all that kind of stuff. All that meant nothing compared to being in a war zone. So, when I keep reading about people, fleeing Beirut or, some of the things in some of the cities in the Middle East and they have to become refugees, well, I empathize a lot because we were exactly the same way. And just trying to stay alive and getting the hell out of there, from the war zone. And of course, for us, being German was the worst thing altogether because, we were at that period of time, toward the end of the war, we were probably the most hated people on the planet because it was a world war and we were at war with everybody. Maybe not Japan, but well, I'm laughing about this stuff now because here I am, still alive and talking about this. So if anybody that is listening to this video has any questions about what it was like then, I have a very vivid recollection, and there are lots of stories about individual incidents, that I experienced at that time, but probably the most terrific or horrific was that my brother Heinz and I got diphtheria. And I was only talking about, that Walter, uh, Walter was, when my dad sent us off, we actually had Heinz already, okay, because Heinz was only a couple of years younger than I, and then Walter came later. Walter was 5 years younger than I. So he was a baby at that time, was already, but he was also born in Radom, so there were actually three of us, with mom, that my dad transplanted to the Sudetenland. And the reason we didn't go any further was, bombs were falling everywhere, so there wasn't really no place to go, except away from the Russian front. And of course, my dad didn't imagine that the Russians would come this far. So at that time, nobody knew what was happening. And the people in the Ukraine, I empathize with them, because I don't know what the hell the Russians are thinking. Why do they need to annex the Ukraine by force, especially? I mean, if they were after some of the resources that are in the country, they're not free anyway. They can buy them, because people have to work, in order to create those things and export them. So that's not it. So evidently, it is a matter of some sort of Russian pride, and the Cold War that ended badly for communism in Moscow. So I'm not sure what will happen now, but this war is brand new, and the fighting is evidently fierce in some areas. The Russians are losing people, the Ukrainians are losing people, and it's all for what? For what? It just doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. So, well, that's about it. I guess the only response, that America has is pushing sanctions. And I guess we're shipping some supplies, war supplies. So let me just mention something real quick. I was talking some time ago about hearing aids, that I got hearing aids. So I don't know whether you can, in the video, you can tell whether I'm wearing hearing aids, and I think it's probably hard that you can see that I'm wearing hearing aids, but I really am. And so, actually, there's a little kind of a wire going into my ear. It's a tiny little microphone or speaker actually going in. The microphone is actually behind the ear. And so the technology is just remarkable that can happen. And, I can hear the higher frequencies much better. So, a steel mill did me damage, actually I did myself damage, because I was too stupid, to not wear hearing protection. I was that Superman, that is so typical, of young people, in my 20s and 30s, So, yeah, what hearing protection, who needs the hearing protection? I'm tough, right? We'll live forever. And a day. All right. Well, if you have anything to add to this, but I just want to leave you with this thought, that I pray for the people in the Ukraine and the Russians that are being sent in there, because they're also having a rough time. They're losing a lot of equipment and a lot of people. There's some, they think there's some 3,000 Russian soldiers already killed, and I think most of them because some of them came in with air transports, and the Ukrainians were able to shoot some of that down. And oh man, this is just, I just can't believe it that we're doing this, and that I'm actually having to experience something like this. Happening in Europe. Whatever happened to the adage, of we're too smart for war. you know, and evidently we're not. So, oddly, the stock market had one of their best days. And that's kind of hard to explain from my perspective, you know, but it is said that stock market does not like uncertainty. And once the Russians invaded and war was a certainty with Ukraine, the stock market gained like 600 points, you know. What the hell? How does that happen? But who knows what actually drives the market? I guess people are trying to figure all that out. In any case, thank you, Marge, my wife, my wonderful wife, for sitting here with me in this video. And I hope that I transmitted some of the feelings and you know, the facts of war. And I tell you, don't clamor for anything like this. You know, it's you know, even when we were going into Afghanistan, and you know, we had reasons because, you know, there was this Osama bin Laden and all that, and then, you know, of course, Kuwait, you know, with Iraq, and before that it was Kosovo, and you know, the ethnic cleansing in Yugoslavia and all that kind of stuff. So there's always something going on, but for a nation, a Western nation, basically, invading another Western nation is just unthinkable, you know. I didn't think that would happen in these days. Nobody's going to win on that. Nobody's going to win. Anyway, I bid you farewell. And maybe it's time for us to get off this planet because we're too stupid to run our own. And we must infect the universe with us. Auf Wiedersehen.